I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president's daughter hopped on my ATV and vanished down the block. And her excuse? She called it a simple compliance check. Funny thing is, the only thing checked that day was my willpower not to pull her off that seat myself. Let me start from the beginning. The garage door was open. That was my first mistake, I guess. Or maybe my first mistake was moving into a neighborhood with a homeowners association. It's a toss-up. Saturday morning. I was finishing the ATV I'd spent 6 months restoring when I felt eyes on me. I looked up and it was Madison Duke. Madison was the 16-year-old daughter of our esteemed HOA president, Karen Duke. She stood at the edge of my driveway, leaning against her mom's golf cart, the one with the little HOA president flag fluttering on the back. She had her phone in her hand, of course, held up like she was filming. She had this smirk on her face, the kind of expression that only comes from a lifetime of never being told no. It was a look that said, "Everything I see is mine for the taking, and you're just a boring obstacle in my world." I didn't like that look. I didn't like it one bit. I'm a calm guy. My wife Pam says my resting heart rate is probably in the negatives, but something about that entitled smirk just set my teeth on edge. "That's a nice toy, Cole," she said. Her voice had that lazy, bored tone to it, like she was doing me a favor by even speaking. "It's not a toy, Madison," I replied, my voice flat. I kept wiping the seat. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "And you're on my property." "Technically," she drawled, taking a slow step forward. "The driveway is common area according to Bylaw 7, Section C. Mom says so." She was testing me, always testing. Her mother armed her with just enough bogus legal-sounding nonsense to be a menace. I stopped wiping and looked her dead in the eye. "The slab of concrete I poured and paid for is my property. Take another step, and it's trespassing." She just laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Whatever." She glanced into my garage. Her eyes scanned the tool bench, the neatly hung wrenches, the lawnmower. Then they locked onto something. A small magnetic box stuck to the side of the metal shelf, right next to the door leading into the house. The spare key box. My second mistake. It's one of those things you do for convenience and never think twice about, until the day you really, really should have. Her smirk widened. I saw the glint in her eye. She knew what it was. I knew she knew. "Mom says your ATV is a violation anyway," she said, her eyes still fixed on the key box. Loud, obnoxious, not in keeping with the community's aesthetic. "It's parked in my garage, Madison. It's not making a sound. Go bother someone else." I turned my back to her, a deliberate dismissal. I started coiling an extension cord. I figured if I ignored her, she'd get bored and wander off, like a raccoon that finds an empty garbage can. That was my third mistake. The silence behind me stretched for a few seconds. It was too quiet. I turned back around just in time to see the security notification pop up on my phone. My phone, which was sitting on the ATV's seat. It was a motion alert from the doorbell camera inside the garage, the one I'd installed for peace of mind. The irony was thick enough to choke on. I watched the live feed in stunned silence. The video showed Madison, quick as a snake, darting into my garage. Her back was to the main door where I stood, so she thought she was unseen. She snatched the magnetic box off the shelf, popped it open, and took out the key. Her movements were fluid, practiced. This wasn't her first time doing something like this. The camera caught her face perfectly as she turned. She had a look of pure, malicious glee. She thought she was untouchable. The word practically hung in the air around her. She slipped out of the garage, silent as a ghost. I heard the soft crunch of her sneakers on the asphalt. I walked to the edge of the driveway. She was already swinging a leg over the ATV. She jammed the key into the ignition. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. The whole performance was for me, for her audience on whatever social media platform she was broadcasting to. The engine roared to life, louder than I expected. It shattered the quiet morning. She revved it, a plume of exhaust puffing out behind her. Still no helmet. Of course not. A helmet would mess up her hair and hide that triumphant sneer. She glanced over her shoulder at me, held up her phone, and winked. Then she gunned it. The ATV shot out of my driveway, fishtailing a little on the pavement before she corrected it. She sped down the street, holding her phone up with one hand, steering with the other, a perfect picture of reckless, arrogant stupidity. I just stood there for a second, watching her go. The sound of the engine faded as she rounded the corner. My restored, beautiful 6-month project was gone. Stolen by a bratty teenager in broad daylight. My blood started to boil. Not a hot, angry boil. A cold one. A slow, methodical simmer. Pam came out the front door, a coffee mug in her hand. She'd heard the engine. "What was that?" "Was that our ATV?" she asked, her brow furrowed with confusion. I took a deep breath. I held up my phone and showed her the doorbell notification. "Part 1 of our problem is on video," I said, my voice eerily calm. "She just stole the key from the garage, and then she stole the bike." Pam's eyes went wide. She looked down the empty street, then back at me. "Are you kidding me? Madison, did you call the police?" "I am calling now," I said, my mind already working, clicking through the steps. This was going to be simple. Call, record, report. My grandfather, Uncle Frank, always said, "Keep your head while everyone else is losing theirs." He was a mechanic who'd seen everything from bar fights to engine fires, and his advice was always the same. Keep your head while everyone else is losing theirs. Right now, Madison was losing hers for an audience, and I was going to be the calm in the center of her storm. My phone was in a cradle on the dash. The dash cam synced to our server when I parked at home, and it auto-uploads when it hits our Wi-Fi. I tapped the screen. Pam answered on the first ring. Her voice was already in business mode. Crisp, efficient, no nonsense. "I've got 911 on the other line, Cole. I'm patching you in. The phone is on speaker. Dispatcher, my husband is now following the stolen vehicle. His name is Cole Mercer. Cole, you're on with dispatch." A calm, professional female voice filled the cab of my truck. "Mr. Mercer, can you confirm you are following a stolen all-terrain vehicle?" "That's correct," I said, turning onto the main boulevard that led out of our little pocket of suburbia. Up ahead, maybe a quarter of a mile, I could see the green speck of my ATV. Madison wasn't exactly being subtle. She was swerving back and forth across the 2 lanes, her phone still held high. A rolling spectacle of idiocy. "It's a green 2022 Can-Am Outlander, bought used and beat up. I'd spent 6 months bringing it back. The driver is a female juvenile, 16 years old. Name is Madison Duke, no helmet. She is driving recklessly." "Sir, we do not advise you to pursue the vehicle," the dispatcher said, her tone standard procedure. "I'm not pursuing," I clarified, keeping my speed exactly at the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. "I'm maintaining a safe visual distance. I'm a witness. I am providing you with a real-time location. The vehicle is currently heading north on Lakeside Drive, approaching the roundabout at Crestwood." There was a pause, then the click of a keyboard. "Understood, sir. Units are being dispatched to your location. Can you describe the driver?" "Caucasian female, approximately 5'5", long blonde hair, wearing a pink tank top and white shorts. She appears to be live streaming the theft on her cell phone." I added that last part with a certain dry satisfaction. She was creating her own evidence, a beautiful high-definition stream of her committing a felony. Some criminals are smart. Madison was not one of them. Pam's voice cut in, a digital ghost in the machine. "Cole, I'm pulling the doorbell footage from the garage. It's crystal clear. Shows her entering, taking the key, everything. I'm also logging into your Can-Am account. Didn't you put an AirTag in the storage compartment? The account might not ping unless the ATV is on. The AirTag will." I almost smiled. Of course I did. Tucked away in a small waterproof baggie, taped to the inside of the rear storage box. "Yes, I did." "Good thinking, Pam." "Got it," she said. "I'm tracking it. The tag is active. I have a precise GPS location. I'm relaying it to the 911 operator on my end. They'll have her exact route, second by second. This is why I married her. While I was the calm one on the ground, she was my eye in the sky, my mission control. She saw the whole board while I was just looking at the next move. We were a well-oiled machine. The Dukes, for all their bluster and power, were just a rusty collection of mismatched parts. They relied on intimidation and people giving up. They never planned on running into someone who wouldn't. Up ahead, Madison took the roundabout way too fast. The ATV tilted precariously on 2 wheels. For a heart-stopping second, I thought she was going to flip it, right into the manicured petunias in the center island. But she managed to wrestle it back under control. She was drunk on her own perceived power. This was about more than just a joyride. This was a statement. Her mother, Karen Duke, ran our HOA like her own personal kingdom. She fined people for having the wrong shade of white on their trim. She sent threatening letters if your grass was a quarter of an inch too high. She had Gage, her head of security, a wannabe cop with a power trip and a golf cart, patrol the streets like a private army. Karen ran the HOA like a throne. Rules were for other people. Madison learned it by heart. "Sir, a patrol car is approaching your location from the east." The dispatcher's voice cut through my thoughts. "Please remain in your vehicle and let the officers handle the situation." "Will do," I said. I saw the flash of blue and red lights in my rearview mirror. A police cruiser was coming up behind me. As it passed, I saw another one up ahead, positioned to block the intersection Madison was speeding toward. They had her boxed in. It was over. Or at least, it should have been. Madison saw the lights. Her reaction was predictable. Instead of stopping, she panicked. She yanked the handlebars hard, cutting a sharp right turn onto a smaller residential street. A street filled with kids playing, people walking their dogs. The danger level just spiked. "She's evading," I said into the phone, my voice tight. She just turned east onto Willow Creek Lane. This is a residential street. Low visibility. "Units are in pursuit," the dispatcher confirmed. "Sir, please pull over to the side of the road. Let them pass." I did as she said, pulling my truck to the curb. The first cruiser sped past me, sirens now blaring. I watched it go, a knot tightening in my stomach. This was escalating. This was turning into something much bigger and uglier than a simple theft. This is when stupid turns dangerous. And it was all because a girl who had been given everything thought she was entitled to one more thing. She thought she was untouchable. Now, with police cars closing in, she was about to find out how thin that bubble of protection really was. The only question left was who she might hurt before it burst. I sat in my truck, listening to the distant sirens. The immediate chase was out of my hands now, and that was for the best. My job was to be a good witness, not a vigilante. I saw the second police cruiser turn onto Willow Creek Lane, following the first. The quiet Saturday morning was officially over. My phone was still connected to dispatch. "Mr. Mercer, please stay on the line. An officer will be with you shortly to take your statement." I was about to respond when a new vehicle appeared, coming from the opposite direction. It was a large white SUV, and it was driving far too fast for a residential street. It screeched to a halt right next to my truck, the tires protesting loudly. The driver's side door flew open and out stormed Karen Duke. She was dressed in what I assumed was her weekend power outfit, a pastel pink tracksuit, gleaming white sneakers, and oversized sunglasses that hid half of her face. Her expression, however, was not hidden at all. It was a mask of pure theatrical fury. She slammed the car door with enough force to rattle the windows and marched toward my truck. I rolled down my window, my face a perfect blank. I wasn't going to give her anything to work with. "Cole Mercer!" she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What do you think you're doing? You're harassing my daughter. I'm going to have you arrested." I just looked at her. "Your daughter," I said, my voice low and even, "stole my all-terrain vehicle from my garage. The police are now involved because she is evading them. I'd say she's doing a fine job of getting herself arrested all on her own." Her face contorted. It was fascinating, really. Watching the gears turn as she tried to find a way to make this my fault. In her world, nothing was ever the fault of a Duke. Problems were caused by other people, lesser people, who failed to accommodate their whims. "She did no such thing," Karen snapped. "Madison is a good girl. She would never." "I have it on video, Karen." The words were simple, but they landed with the force of a physical blow. I saw her flinch. Just a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch. But it was there. She knew. She knew exactly what her daughter was. Before she could come up with a new line of attack, one of the police cruisers that had passed me moments before looped back around. It pulled up behind her SUV, lights still flashing. A tall, serious-looking officer got out. He had a calm, authoritative air about him. He walked toward us, his eyes assessing the situation. He looked at Karen, then at me. "Are you Cole Mercer?" he asked, his gaze settling on me. "I am, officer," I said. "And you are?" he asked, turning to Karen. "I am Karen Duke, president of this HOA. And this man is harassing my child, she declared, pointing a trembling finger at me. The officer's expression didn't change. He was clearly used to this kind of drama. Ma'am, your daughter is currently fleeing from police on a stolen vehicle. I suggest you calm down. He turned back to me. Sir, can you tell me what happened? As I started to recount the story, the open garage, Madison's taunts, the theft of the key, the doorbell video, Karen began rummaging frantically in her oversized purse. She was searching for something, her movements jerky and desperate. Finally, she pulled out a piece of paper. It was a single sheet, folded and crumpled, as if it had been living in the bottom of her bag for weeks. She brandished it like a weapon. You can't do anything to her, she shouted, waving the paper at the officer. It's not her fault. She has a condition. The officer stopped writing in his notepad and gave her a weary look. A condition? Yes, Karen said, triumphant. She has spontaneous seizure syndrome. It's a very serious medical issue. When it happens, she gets confused. She's not responsible for her actions. This paper proves it. It's a legal document. She thrust the paper at him. The officer took it, his face unreadable. I leaned out my window, trying to get a better look. It wasn't a doctor's note. It wasn't a legal document from a court. It looked like a generic form she'd printed off the internet. At the top, in a bold, generic font, it said, Medical Exemption Notice. The text below was a garbled mess of pseudo-legal terms, talking about diminished capacity and medical necessity. And at the bottom, where a doctor's signature should have been, was a looping, arrogant scrawl, Karen Duke. She had filled it out and signed it herself. The officer read it. He looked at the signature line. He looked back up at Karen. He folded the paper neatly in half and handed it back to her. Ma'am, he said, and the exhaustion in his voice was profound. This is not a legal document. This is a piece of paper you signed. It doesn't exempt your daughter from vehicle theft. Karen's face fell. The triumphant fury drained away, replaced by a sputtering, indignant rage. How dare you? Do you know who I am? I am the president of this community. I will have your badge for this. The officer just sighed. Ma'am, right now the only thing you need to be concerned with is your daughter's dangerous behavior and the criminal charges already in motion. Please step back. He turned his attention back to me. It was at that exact moment that we heard it. A high-pitched scream, followed by the squeal of tires and a sickening crunch of metal. It came from the next street over, Willow Creek Lane. The officer's head snapped up. His hand went to his radio. All units, what's the status on that pursuit? My blood ran cold. That wasn't the sound of an arrest. That was the sound of a crash. The sound of something going horribly, horribly wrong. Karen's fake legal document was forgotten. Her empty threats evaporated. The game was over. Madison's joyride had just collided with the real world. And I had a terrible feeling that someone else was about to pay the price. The officer didn't wait for a response on his radio. He was already moving, sprinting back to his cruiser. Stay here, he yelled over his shoulder, a command directed at both me and Karen. He jumped into his car and sped off in the direction of the crash, sirens screaming. I stayed until a second unit waved traffic forward. Then I rolled in, slow, well behind the perimeter. I watched him go, a cold dread washing over me. Karen stood frozen on the pavement, her face pale, the ridiculous seizure paper fluttering from her hand. For the first time, a crack had appeared in her armor of entitlement. The sound of that crash was the sound of a reality she couldn't control, couldn't bully, and couldn't sign a fake form to make go away. I put my truck in drive and followed, keeping a respectful distance. I wasn't going to get in the way, but I had to see. I had to know what had happened. I turned onto Willow Creek Lane and my heart sank. The scene was chaotic. My ATV was sideways in the middle of the street, one front wheel bent at an unnatural angle where it had slammed into the curb. An officer photographed it, then called a tow for impound and prints. Madison was on the ground, tangled up in a rose bush in someone's front yard, crying hysterically. But that wasn't what held everyone's attention. That wasn't the center of the horror. A few feet from the ATV, a baby stroller lay on its side. Its wheels were still spinning. A young woman, who I recognized as Sarah, a new mom from down the block, was on her knees on the grass, clutching her baby to her chest. She was shaking, her face as white as a sheet. A small crowd of neighbors was gathering, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. The first police officer was already with Sarah, checking on her and the baby. I parked my truck and got out, walking slowly toward the scene. I kept my distance, not wanting to intrude. From what I could piece together from the tire marks on the road and the position of the stroller, it was terrifyingly clear what had happened. Madison, trying to evade the police, had come tearing around the corner. Sarah had been walking on the sidewalk. Madison must have lost control, swerved off the road, and headed directly for them. Sarah must have had a split second to react, to shove the stroller out of the way. The ATV had missed the baby by inches, clipping the stroller's wheel and sending it tumbling before Madison finally crashed into the curb and was thrown into the bushes. The baby started to cry, a thin, frightened wail. He wasn't hurt. The cry meant he was scared, not injured. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard because it meant he was alive. Sarah was murmuring to him, rocking him back and forth, trying to soothe him, though she was crying herself. Her husband, Tom, came running out of their house, his face a mask of terror. He saw his wife and baby on the lawn, the wrecked ATV, and the police, and he just knelt down and wrapped his arms around his family. The air on the street turned ice cold. This wasn't about a stolen vehicle anymore. This wasn't about a spoiled teenager acting out. This was about a baby who was almost killed. The neighbors weren't just curious onlookers anymore. They were witnesses. Their expressions had hardened. I saw Mrs. Gable from 2 doors down, her arms crossed, her mouth a thin, hard line. I saw Mr. Henderson, the man Karen had fined for a garden gnome, staring at Madison with undisguised contempt. The protective bubble of the Duke name had just popped, loudly and for everyone to see. Karen finally arrived, her power walk now a frantic, stumbling run. She pushed her way through the neighbors, her eyes wild. She saw Madison crying in the rose bush and rushed to her side. "My baby! Are you hurt? What did they do to you?" she cried, ignoring the overturned stroller, ignoring Sarah and Tom, ignoring the very real tragedy her daughter had nearly caused. That was the moment the neighborhood turned on her completely. "What did they do to her?" a voice called out. It was Tom. He had stood up, his baby now safe in his arms. His face was filled with a righteous fury I wouldn't have thought him capable of. "Your daughter almost ran over my son. She almost killed my child, and you're asking what we did to her?" Karen seemed to see him for the first time. She looked from Tom to the overturned stroller, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of remorse. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by her default setting, aggressive defense. "It was an accident. She has a medical condition. She was confused." She started to bluster, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. The crumpled paper was still in her hand, a pathetic, useless talisman. No one was buying it. The officer who had taken my statement walked over to her. His face was grim. "Ma'am, your daughter is being placed under arrest. She is facing charges of vehicle theft, felony fleeing, and reckless endangerment. You need to step away and let the paramedics check on her." Madison's wails intensified as a second officer approached her, but it was all for show. The paramedics quickly determined she had nothing more than a few scratches from the rose thorns. As they helped her up, she looked around at the silent, staring faces of her neighbors. Her face, tear-streaked and dirty, was no longer arrogant. It was scared. She was finally, truly, seeing the consequences of her actions. She wasn't untouchable. She was just a scared kid in a whole lot of trouble. As the officer led a handcuffed Madison to the back of a patrol car, I made eye contact with Pam, who had walked down the street to join the crowd. She looked at me, then at the shaken family, then at my wrecked ATV. Her face was a mixture of anger and grim determination. She held up her phone and gave me a slight nod. The message was clear. This was no longer just about getting my property back. This was about making sure the Dukes were held accountable for the danger they had brought into our community. We had the video of the theft. Now, we had a street full of witnesses to the reckless aftermath. The evidence was piling up. But Pam's look told me she thought there was more to this story. Something bigger than one stupid, reckless teenager. And we were going to find it. The rest of that afternoon was a blur of police statements and insurance calls. My ATV was towed to an impound lot, a mangled piece of evidence. Madison was taken to juvenile hall. She spent the night there before seeing the judge. Karen, after a final screeching tirade about lawsuits and conspiracies, was told to leave the scene. The street slowly returned to normal, but something had fundamentally changed. The quiet peace of our neighborhood had been shattered, and in its place was a simmering, collective anger. That evening, Pam and I sat at our kitchen table. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a cold, methodical resolve. "This isn't just Madison being a brat," Pam said, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. "This felt planned. Or at least the way Karen reacted, with that ridiculous fake doctor's note. She had an excuse ready to go. It's like she expected Madison to get caught doing something." "She's arrogant," I said, sipping my coffee. "She thinks she can manage her way out of anything." Her solution to her daughter committing a felony was to print a form from the internet. "That's not a master plan. That's just stupidity." "Maybe," Pam said, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "But let's not underestimate them. They've run this neighborhood for 5 years through bullying and bluffing. Let's see what happens when we call their bluff with actual facts." She turned the laptop toward me. "Let's build a case." What followed was a masterclass in modern suburban intelligence gathering. Pam started with a simple text to a neighborhood group chat she'd created a year ago, the one for people who were tired of the HOA's overreach. "Hi everyone. For those who saw the incident today, if you have any doorbell or security camera footage of the green ATV between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., could you please send it to me? We're creating a timeline for the police." The response was immediate. Within minutes, video files started pouring in. It was like a digital neighborhood watch snapping into action. We had footage from the Miller's house, showing Madison blowing through the stop sign at the corner. We had a clip from the Garcia's front door, catching the audio of her shouting, "Can't catch me," as she sped past. Every clip added another layer to the story, painting a picture of pure, unadulterated recklessness. We stitched them together, creating a minute-by-minute video log of her destructive journey through our community. While the videos came in, Pam focused on the digital trail. She pulled up the AirTag data. On the screen, a winding red line snaked through our neighborhood. It showed her route perfectly. From my driveway down Lakeside, her frantic detour onto Willow Creek Lane, and the final abrupt stop where she crashed. "GPS data," Pam murmured, saving a screenshot. Precise, irrefutable, and admissible in court. But then she saw something else. She zoomed in on the map, her brow furrowed. "That's weird," she said. "Look at this." She pointed to a spot on the map, a few blocks away, in a cul-de-sac at the edge of the neighborhood. The red line showed Madison had stopped there for about 90 seconds before continuing her joyride. Why would she stop there? I wondered aloud. That's the end of the street. There's nothing there but the back fence. "And the HOA's maintenance shed," Pam added, her eyes lighting up with a new idea. "Let me check something." She opened a new browser tab and started typing. She went to a popular online marketplace, the kind of place where you sell old furniture and used cars. She typed a few keywords into the search bar. HOA, compliance, pickup, and our neighborhood's name. A handful of listings popped up. They were all vaguely worded. One was for a landscape debris pickup service. Another was for patio furniture removal. But the language was strange. It was full of HOA buzzwords. Item must be in violation of community standards. Pickup scheduled to ensure aesthetic compliance. The photos were generic, often just a picture of a pickup truck. The sellers all had new profiles with no ratings. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "I'm not sure," Pam said, clicking on one of the ads. "But this feels off. Compliance pickup? That's not a real thing. It sounds like something Karen would invent." She kept digging, cross-referencing the seller names with the public list of residents in our HOA. She got a hit. One of the sellers, Gary P., had the same last name as one of the HOA board members, Gary Peterson, Karen's right-hand man. Then she found it. An ad posted 2 days ago. The title was Recreational Vehicle Compliance Seizure. The description was chillingly specific. For removal of non-compliant recreational vehicles, ATVs, dirt bikes, parked in view of the street, as per HOA Bylaw 11F. Pickup and hold fee, $500. The photo was of an empty flatbed trailer. The seller's name was Community First. The contact info was a disposable email address. Bylaw 11F, I muttered. That doesn't exist. I've read the bylaws cover to cover. She made it up. Pam's face was grim. "Cole, I think we just found out why Madison stole your ATV. It wasn't a joyride. She clicked back to the AirTag map and zoomed in on the 90-second stop in the cul-de-sac. She wasn't just stopping. She was meeting someone with a trailer maybe. The plan was probably for her to drive it there. They loaded up, and then they used this fake ad to extort $500 from you to get it back. It all clicked into place. The theft, the fake bylaw, Karen's immediate and practiced excuses. This wasn't just a joyride gone wrong. This was a shakedown. A clumsy, poorly executed, but very real attempt at extortion. They were using the HOA as a cover for their own personal towing and impound scam. Madison wasn't just the spoiled daughter. She was the repo agent. The police pursuit had just messed up their plan. "They're running a racket," I said, the words tasting like acid. "They're stealing from their own neighbors and calling it compliance." Pam looked at me, her eyes hard as diamonds. "And we just found the proof." She pointed to the recreational vehicle compliance seizure ad. It was still active. They were so arrogant, they didn't even bother to take the ad down. An idea started to form in my mind, a cold, simple, and beautiful idea. "They want to pick up a non-compliant vehicle," I said slowly. "I think we should give them one." Pam grinned. The sting was on. We now had a mountain of evidence, a clear motive, and a way to catch them in the act. The question of who was untouchable was about to get a very public answer. The plan came together with a quiet, satisfying click, like a well-made lock. We weren't going to be vigilantes. We were going to do this by the book, a book Karen Duke clearly hadn't bothered to read. The first step was a call to the police department. I asked for the officer who had taken my statement. Officer Miller. I got his voicemail and left a message. "Officer Miller, it's Cole Mercer. We've uncovered some new information regarding the theft of my ATV. It appears to be part of a larger organized scheme. Please call me back." He called back within the hour. His voice was tired but professional. I laid it all out for him, calmly and logically. I told him about the suspicious stop on the AirTag route. I told him about the marketplace ads, the fake bylaws, the connection to the HOA board. I could hear him typing as I spoke. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Mercer," he said finally, "are you telling me you believe the HOA president is running an extortion scheme, using her daughter to steal vehicles they then hold for ransom?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," I said, "and we think we have a way to prove it." I explained the idea. We would use a different ATV, a beat-up older one my buddy Chase had in his garage, as bait. We'd park it at the end of our driveway, partially covered by a tarp, making it look like a new violation. Then we'd answer the ad. Pam would pose as a disgruntled neighbor, tipping them off about the non-compliant vehicle at my address. We'd arrange a pickup. "We want you there," I said. "We want you to witness the transaction. We want you to catch them red-handed." There was another pause. I could imagine him weighing the risks, the procedural hurdles. "This is irregular," he said. "So is an HOA president running a theft ring," I countered. "Look, we have video of the first theft. We have a dozen neighbors who witnessed the reckless endangerment. We have the online ads. This isn't a hunch. This is a pattern. Help us stop it before someone else gets hurt." "Okay, Mercer," he said, a new energy in his voice. "I'll run it by my sergeant. Don't do anything until you hear from us. But if we do this, you follow our instructions to the letter. No heroics. You are a witness, nothing more. Understood?" "Crystal clear, officer," I said. The next 24 hours were a tense waiting game. The police sergeant approved the plan. He set the rules. We stay hands-off. They handle the stop. They saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about my ATV anymore. It was about rooting out a pocket of corruption that was terrorizing a community. Pam got to work. She created a new, anonymous email account and a fake marketplace profile. "Concerned Neighbor," she called it. She contacted the seller of the recreational vehicle compliance seizure ad. "Hello," she wrote. "My neighbor at 124 Oak Street has a new ATV parked in his driveway. It's an eyesore and a clear violation. Can you schedule a compliance pickup?" The reply came back in less than 10 minutes. "Absolutely. We can be there tomorrow evening around 8 p.m. Please ensure the vehicle is accessible. The standard $500 recovery fee will apply to the owner." They didn't even question it. The next evening, the stage was set. Chase's old, rickety ATV sat at the end of my driveway, looking perfectly, beautifully non-compliant. Pam was in the house, monitoring a live feed from 3 different cameras we'd set up. Our front doorbell, a camera hidden in a bush, and one on the dash of my truck, which was parked across the street. Pam mirrored the live camera feed to the detectives so they could watch and listen in real time. She was our director, our mission control. My job was simple: stay visible, stay calm, and play the part of the unsuspecting homeowner. At 7:55 p.m., a large unmarked flatbed truck rumbled down our street. It wasn't some professional towing company. It was an old, rusty Ford, the kind you see on a farm. It pulled up and parked in front of my house. 2 men got out. One was Gary Peterson, the HOA board member. The other was Gage, the head of HOA security. Gage, with his military-style haircut and his constant scowl, the guy who zipped around in his golf cart writing tickets for holiday decorations, left up a day too late. He wasn't wearing his usual security uniform. Tonight, he was dressed in jeans and a black hoodie. He looked less like a security guard and more like a common thug. They walked up to the ATV. Gage gave it a kick. "Yep, this is it," he grunted. "They didn't knock on my door. They didn't leave a notice. They just started unhooking the winch on their truck." This was it, the moment of truth. I opened my front door and walked out onto the porch, holding a mug of coffee, trying to look confused. "Excuse me," I called out. "Can I help you?" Gage turned, and a nasty smile spread across his face. He'd clearly been waiting for this confrontation. "Evening, Mercer. Just performing a compliance pickup. This vehicle is in violation of Bylaw 11F. "I've never heard of Bylaw 11F, I said calmly, "and you're on my property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "We're not leaving," Gage said, taking a step toward me. His posture was aggressive, his shoulders squared. He was trying to intimidate me. "We're taking the vehicle. You can get it back when you pay the $500 fine." I stood my ground on the top step of my porch. "You're not taking anything. This is theft. I'm calling the police." "We are the authority here," Gage snarled, puffing out his chest. He was close now, standing at the bottom of the steps, looking up at me. He was trying to use his physical presence to bully me into backing down. It wasn't working. He was all bluster, a cheap imitation of a tough guy. The whole situation felt surreal, like a scene from a bad movie. And Gage was about to go off script. The police were supposed to move in once the ATV was on the truck, to catch them in the act of transporting stolen property. But Gage was getting impatient. He wanted a fight. The hook was set, the line was taut, and he was about to make the biggest mistake of his night. Gage took another step up, invading my personal space. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You think you're so smart, Mercer. Coming to the meetings, asking questions. You should have learned to keep your mouth shut." His voice was a low growl, meant to be menacing. All I could think was how cliché he was. He was a caricature of a bully, a man whose only power came from a polo shirt with a logo on it. "This has nothing to do with the meetings, Gage," I said, my voice steady. I didn't raise it, I didn't back down, I just held my ground. "This is about you and Gary trying to steal a vehicle from my driveway. Leave now." That was when he did it. He shoved me. It wasn't a hard shove, not enough to knock me over, but it was a clear, unambiguous act of assault. He put both hands on my chest and pushed. "You don't tell me what to do," he hissed. This was the moment where it could all go wrong. Every instinct screamed at me to react, to shove back, to defend myself. I've been in tough situations before. I know how to handle myself. But I also knew that if I laid a hand on him, I would muddy the waters. I would give Karen and her cronies an opening. They would twist it, claim I was the aggressor. The whole narrative would shift. So I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I did nothing. I took the shove, stumbled back a step, and regained my balance. I raised my hands slowly, palms open, a universal sign of de-escalation. "Gage, you just assaulted me," I said, my voice still calm, but with a new hard edge. "You did it in front of a witness." I nodded toward Gary, who was looking distinctly uncomfortable over by the truck. "And you did it on camera." Gage's eyes widened. He glanced around looking for a camera he couldn't see. The seed of doubt had been planted. His tough guy facade began to crumble, replaced by a flicker of panic. He had miscalculated. He expected me to fight, to get into a shouting match, to stoop to his level. He never expected me to be disciplined. He never expected me to be 2 steps ahead. "What camera?" he blustered, but the conviction was gone. "The one that just recorded you putting your hands on me," I said. "The one that's streaming live to the police department." It was a bluff, but a good one. Within seconds, Pam pushed the live feed to the detective's line, turning the bluff into a real-time stream. It was all the signal Pam and the police needed. As the words left my mouth, the night exploded with light and sound. 2 unmarked sedans peeled out from their hiding spots down the street, their headlights flashing, their sirens suddenly erupting with a deafening wail. They screeched to a halt, boxing in the flatbed truck. Doors flew open and 4 plainclothes detectives emerged, their badges hanging from their necks, their expressions all business. Gage froze. His face went from confusion to disbelief, to pure, unadulterated terror in the space of about 2 seconds. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a freight train. Gary Peterson, over by the truck, dropped the winch hook he was holding. It clattered loudly on the pavement. He put his hands up in the air before anyone even told him to. Officer Miller was the first one to reach us. He walked right past me and got directly in Gage's face. "HOA security," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have the right to remain silent." Gage started stammering. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding. We were enforcing the bylaws." "You were attempting to steal a vehicle and you assaulted this man," Miller said, nodding toward me. "We have it all on video. We heard it all live. Their sergeant greenlit the early stop the second the shove hit the live feed." He turned Gage around, pushed him against the side of the flatbed, and cuffed him. The click of the handcuffs was one of the most satisfying sounds I have ever heard. Another detective was cuffing Gary, who was babbling about just following orders from Karen Duke. He was singing like a canary, trying to throw his boss under the bus before he was even in the back of the car. It was pathetic, but I wasn't surprised. Bullies and their followers are only brave when they think they have the upper hand. The second the tables turn, they fold like a cheap suit. I stood on my porch and watched the whole thing unfold. Pam came out and stood beside me, her arm sliding around my waist. We didn't say anything. We just watched. We watched as they put Gage and Gary into separate cars, while an officer photographed the truck, the winch, and the bait ATV. Our plan, born of anger and frustration, came to a perfect clinical conclusion. It was a clean bust, no violence, no ambiguity. Just a couple of small-time crooks caught in a trap of their own making. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt victorious. And a part of me did. But another part of me knew this wasn't over. Gage and Gary were just the hired help. The head of the snake was still out there. Karen Duke wasn't on the scene. She was smart enough to keep her hands clean, to send her minions to do her dirty work. We had them, but we didn't have her, not yet. As they drove her flunkies away, I knew the next phase of the battle was just beginning. We had won the skirmish, but the real fight was still to come. The immediate aftermath of the sting was a whirlwind of official procedure. We gave our statements again, this time to the detectives. Pam handed over a thumb drive containing all the evidence: the stitched-together doorbell videos of Madison's joyride, the AirTag data, screenshots of the marketplace ads, and, most importantly, the high-definition multi-angle video of the attempted theft and Gage's assault. The detectives were impressed. "You two did most of our job for us," one of them said with a wry smile. They told us Gage and Gary were being booked, and that based on Gary's immediate confession, they would be paying a visit to Karen Duke later that night. We finally got back inside our house well after midnight. The bait ATV had been towed away as evidence. The street was quiet again. It was over, we thought. We had them. We had done everything right. We had played by the rules and used the system to expose their rotten little enterprise. We went to bed exhausted, but satisfied. Justice, it seemed, was working. The next morning, however, we got a call that reminded us that the system can be manipulated. It was Officer Miller. His voice was tight with frustration. "Mr. Mercer, Pam, we have a problem. The video you provided of last night's incident, the SD card from your dash camera is missing." I felt a cold pit in my stomach. "What do you mean, missing?" I asked. "It was in the camera, in my truck. Your forensics team took it out themselves." "I know," Miller said. "It was logged into evidence last night, This morning, the bag was there, the seal was broken, and the card was gone. We're tearing the station apart, but it's vanished. Pam and I looked at each other. We knew instantly what had happened. This wasn't a random mistake. This was deliberate. Karen, Pam said, her voice barely a whisper. She must have a lawyer who knows someone, who pulled a string. We can't prove that, Miller cautioned, but the timing is suspicious. Karen Duke and her lawyer were at the station until 3 a.m., trying to get Gage and Peterson released. They were in the building. The dash cam footage was the single best piece of evidence. It had a clear, unobstructed view of the entire confrontation. It captured Gage's words, his aggressive posture, and the shove. Without it, the case against him for assault became my word against his. It was a classic move. If you can't fight the evidence, make the evidence disappear. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. They were still trying to rig the game. It's okay, Pam said, ever the strategist. They don't know we have backups. She pointed to our server rack, humming quietly in the corner of the office. The camera automatically uploaded the full resolution file to our cloud server the second it connected to our Wi-Fi. We have a perfect copy. I relayed this to Officer Miller. There was a moment of silence, then a low chuckle. You two are really something else, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. Okay, email me a link to that file immediately. In the meantime, this changes things. A missing piece of evidence from a secure locker isn't just a problem, it's a crime. My sergeant is furious. He's authorizing a search. We sent the file, and then we waited. The hours ticked by. We knew the police were moving, but we didn't know what was happening. The feeling of helplessness was infuriating. We had done everything right, and still, the Dukes were finding ways to slither out of trouble. What makes someone untouchable? Maybe it's not about never getting caught. Maybe it's about having the power to erase the proof after you are. Late that afternoon, Officer Miller called again. He didn't sound frustrated anymore. He sounded triumphant. You are not going to believe this, he said. He told us what happened. Armed with a warrant, 2 detectives had paid another visit to Karen Duke. They weren't there to ask questions this time. They were there to search her house, her car, and her personal belongings for the missing SD card. Her lawyer was present, of course, blustering about harassment and rights violations. Karen herself was a picture of indignant innocence, sipping tea on her veranda while the police searched her home office. They didn't find it in the house. They didn't find it in her car. Finally, as per the warrant, a female officer asked to search Karen's purse. Her lawyer immediately objected. That's an invasion of privacy. You have no cause. But the warrant was airtight. It specified any and all personal effects. Karen, her face turning pale, clutched her expensive designer handbag to her chest. There's nothing in there, she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. The officer calmly but firmly took the purse. She opened it up. Inside, nestled amongst the wallet, the lipstick, and the car keys, was a small, clear plastic baggie. The kind used for evidence. Inside the baggie was a tiny black micro SD card. The evidence tag was still partially attached. Ma'am, the detective said, holding up the bag, can you explain what a piece of evidence from an active police investigation is doing in your handbag? According to Miller, Karen completely fell apart. The calm, composed HOA president vanished, replaced by a stammering, panicked mess. She claimed she had no idea how it got there. She suggested I must have planted it. She accused the police of setting her up. She tried every desperate, pathetic excuse in the book. But the evidence was right there, in her hand, in her purse. She had personally stolen a piece of evidence from a police station. She hadn't just crossed a line, she had pole vaulted over it. Karen Duke is under arrest, Miller said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The charge is tampering with evidence, a felony. Her daughter stole a vehicle. Her cronies attempted to steal another one. And she, the mastermind, tried to cover it up and got caught red-handed. I think it's safe to say the Duke dynasty is over. The news was stunning. It was the twist we never saw coming. Her arrogance, her belief that she was above the law, was so profound that she had committed a crime far more serious than the ones she was trying to cover up. She had personally handed us the final, irrefutable piece of evidence we needed to bring her whole corrupt world crashing down. The fight wasn't over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The untouchable queen had just been checkmated, and she had moved the final piece herself. The end came not with a single dramatic bang, but with a series of quiet, orderly clicks of the legal and bureaucratic system she had so long held in contempt, playing out first in a sterile courtroom, and then in a crowded community hall. First came the court dates. We were there for all of them. Madison's was in juvenile court. She stood before the judge, a different person from the sneering girl who had stolen my ATV. She was small, quiet, and terrified. Her mother wasn't there to protect her. Karen was out on bail and fighting her own, more serious charges. With the mountain of evidence against her, our videos, the AirTag data, the testimony from a dozen neighbors, and the near-fatal encounter with Sarah's baby, her lawyer had no choice but to advise her to plead guilty. The judge did not go easy on her. He spoke about responsibility, about consequences, and about the profound danger she had put the community in. The sentence was firm. 1 night in a juvenile detention center to give her a taste of real consequences, 2 years of probation, a suspended driver's license until she was 18, mandatory enrollment in a reckless driving education program, 200 hours of community service, and full financial restitution. That meant the Dukes had to pay for the full cost of repairs to my ATV, Sarah's stroller, and the rosebush she had destroyed. It was a comprehensive and fitting punishment. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a structured plan to force her to grow up. Next up were Gage and Gary. Faced with the undeniable video evidence and Gary's full confession, they both took plea deals. They got probation, fines, and community service. Gage later lost his security license in the administrative review. Their careers as small-time tyrants were over. The main event was Karen Duke. Her case was more complex. The evidence tampering charge was a felony, far more serious than anything else. Her expensive lawyer tried every trick in the book, filing motions and creating delays. But the fact remained. The stolen SD card was found in her purse. Her trial was set for a later date, but the writing was on the wall. Her power, her reputation, her entire world was collapsing. The emergency HOA meeting was packed. Not 20 people, hundreds. Years of small fines and big threats sat in that room like heat. I took the podium and laid out the day. The theft, the crash, the sting, the missing SD card, the arrest, the warrant, the card found in Karen Duke's purse. No speeches, just times, dates, video stills, and police reports. When I finished, it was quiet for one long breath. Then the room broke. A motion hit the floor, a vote of no confidence. Our bylaws allow a special removal vote with a simple majority at an emergency meeting. Hands went up like a wave, passed. Another motion, end the contract with Gage's security team, passed. You could feel the neighborhood unlock. We elected an interim board on the spot, steady people, neighbors who listen, Mr. Henderson, Tom, others who had never been given the mic. A few days later, the impound called. My ATV was ready. The Duke's insurance covered the repairs. I signed the chain of custody form, the last paper in a stack that felt like a mountain. Keys in hand, I rolled the ATV into the sun. Fresh plastics, straight wheel. The engine came alive with a calm, even note. I buckled my helmet. No rush, no show. I eased out, took the long way home, full stops at every sign. It felt good to be boring. Pam waited on the porch, arms folded, smiling in that way that says, both finally, and I told you we would get here. I parked in the garage, killed the engine, and listened to the quiet. Earned quiet. We did not win by shouting. We won by being steady. We called right away. We recorded everything. We let the truth be heavy and patient. Their power was noise. Our power was proof. What makes someone untouchable? Nothing. It is a story bullies tell, and it breaks the moment people stop believing it. When a street stands together, with video, witnesses, and votes, no one is untouchable. Not a spoiled teenager with a phone, not a security tough guy with a bad-shaped sticker, not a president with a gavel and a shaky signature. In the end, accountability looks simple. A vote counted, a case number filed, a receipt stamped, a helmet buckled. The rain ended, the board reset, the scam exposed. I took one last look at the driveway, at Pam, at the garage light glowing warm. Then I shut the door. Justice for once sounded like an engine idling down.